Welcome back to Film Flashback, where I take a look at movies and shows to see what makes them great or what could have made them better. I am your host, MD, and this time I wanted to review episodes 3 and 7 of the divisive Star Wars show The Acolyte and explain why, even though there were some interesting moments, they ultimately missed the mark. But before we begin, here's your warning that there are major spoilers ahead. The biggest issue with episode 7 is that it provided more questions than answers. And the answers we did get were a huge letdown because they were mostly disappointing. The big mystery the whole show was leading up to was what really happened that night 16 years ago on Brendok. We had several references to it throughout the season, including Sol back in episode 6, which ended with him saying he was finally going to tell May everything. But when episode 7 ended, we still had a lot of questions, including why did Sol use the Force to hold up the bridge instead of just picking up May and Osha? That would have been much easier and he would have saved both of them instead of having to choose. And after letting May go, he could have used the Force to bring Osha in instead of running to catch her. It was certainly more dramatic this way. But in a similar situation back in episode 1, Sol used the Force to catch Osha and bring her in before she fell. Maybe he learned how to do this afterwards, but it was a strange choice. And why was he so intent in making Osha his Padawan? We are never told why he has such a strong connection to her. He spies on May and Osha from a distance and believes they are in danger. That was especially the case when we saw Mother Aniseya knock them down. We learned in episode 3 this was just training, but Sol wouldn't know that. It seems like there's a deeper reason why Sol is acting this way, but we are left to wonder. Also, how did May survive that fall when the bridge collapsed? Maybe it was Mother Coral, but we have no idea. Speaking of Coral, where did she go? After fighting Sol, she turned into that black smoke and disappeared. And what was Aniseya doing when she turned into that same black smoke? Apparently she was going to take May to safety, but that looked real suspect, so I understand why Sol took her out. Also, May saw what Sol did to her mother, so why didn't she blame him for everything and seek vengeance against him when she had plenty of chances throughout the show? In episode 4, May said she was ready to turn herself in to the Jedi after seeing Osha was still alive. Now, I love a good revenge story, and after watching Sol take her mother out, I think for May, he would have been enemy number 1. Or, since this show was based on Kill Bill, her primary focus would have been to take out the other Jedi and build up to Sol at the end, kind of like a final boss in a video game. And Sol stabbed Aniseya with his lightsaber and it finished her, but Sabine survived after taking a lightsaber to the gut. That still doesn't make sense to me. And how did the fire from May destroy the entire mountain? The only thing flammable was the book she burned, yet the fire traveled through rock and led to their electrical room, causing an explosion. Since they were living in an old mine, maybe it was filled with some element that would allow the fire to spread. But we never find out for sure. Another thing, Aniseya knew the Jedi were on the planet back in episode 3, but how come they never could sense Sol was in their building? He spent a lot of time there watching them and never once got caught. And I thought it was wild how he scaled an entire mountain not once, but twice, again with no one seeing him. I also found it strange how Torbin for 7 weeks was on Brendok and didn't know exactly why they were there. Also, how did the witches possess Kelnacca? We saw earlier in the episode how Aniseya controlled Torbin's mind because she found his weakness. He wanted to go home. So what was Kelnacca's weakness that they were able to exploit? And what did Indara do to break the witch's spell over him, and why did all of them die as a result? Maybe all the witches needed to control him because he was so powerful, but we never find out. Also, why did Torbin want to take a vow of silence and ultimately end it all? He may have been the one to start the chaos because he wanted to leave, but what he did does not match the extreme guilt he feels when we first meet him. I was expecting Torbin to be the one who took down several witches with that level of guilt. If anything, it should be Sol feeling this way because he was the one who found the children, pushed to save Osha, and who took out Aniseya. And why did they have to lie? Indara told them to, so Osha could have a chance to be a Jedi. But the council already said no, even though Osha passed their test and was force sensitive. How would the truth change anything? Even with the lie, it is strange how the council accepted a child who was older than they normally accept, and from a force-sensitive witch coven who just lost her whole family. That is the lie they told, and does not sound like a good candidate for someone to be accepted into the Jedi Order. Sol does ask two good questions that we should have had an answer for as well. Where did the twins come from, and how were they created? And there's more, but you get the idea. Episode 7 leaves us with more questions than answers, which should not be the case. We should know everything by now, so the last episode of the season will be the fallout from these revelations and tying up all of the loose ends. I wanted to review episode 3, titled Destiny, and 7, titled Choice, together since they were two sides of the same story. I do like how these are different perspectives depending on which side you're on. Osha may have thought it was her destiny to become a Jedi, and Sol showing up was her sign that it was meant to be. Or May could have felt her life was perfect, but because of bad choices by Sol and the others, her life has now changed forever. The structure would have worked best if all of the questions above were more clearly set up in episode 3, so we could have a much better understanding and a better payoff of what happens in episode 7. For example, explain in episode 3 why Sol so badly wanted a Padawan. Maybe he tried before and failed miserably, resulting in their death, so through his guilt, he was determined to make up for it with a new one. That way, when he finds a new force-sensitive child in Osha, it'll explain his drive to make her his Padawan in episode 7. Also, show what it means when Aniseya changes into this black smoke. We need to see in episode 3 how this allows her to take someone away to safety when they sense danger. This will create a division of knowledge where the audience knows something that the characters do not. This will set up the tragic events of episode 7, as we know Aniseya is trying to save May, but since Sol doesn't know that, he takes her out with his lightsaber. That would have made this moment so much more devastating. It wasn't all bad, since there are a few good moments to point out. The actors portraying Sol and Mother Aniseya were absolute standouts once again. Even though I had an issue with Aniseya's perception of the Force, that was more about the writing than her as an actress. She was so good that I wished we had a chance to see more of her. And Sol was the one saving grace of the Acolyte. I really liked the regret he had when he faced against Mother Coral. He didn't fight back and even allowed her to take a few shots at him. He knew he messed up, and it allowed us to feel the weight of his choices, which led to Aniseya's death. And what about that lightsaber battle with Kelnacca? It was great, but I wish it was more violent though. Wookiees are known for their incredible strength, so it would have been great to see him really wreak havoc on the others, especially Torbin. And there you have it, why episodes 3 and 7 of The Acolyte unfortunately missed the mark. Let me know in the comments section below what you thought of this video and the show. Also, please like and subscribe so you can enjoy future videos on my channel. As always, thanks for watching.